The one rule he swore no one would break: just walk through his door. There were no family photos in Grayson Weller's office. No portraits. No smiling frames. No ghosts. Only glass and silence. The entire 68th floor was a monument to discipline: floor-to-ceiling windows, black marble desks, and leather so polished it reflected back whatever stood too close. That was the point. Weller didn't let anything close. Not anymore. It had been 3 years since Evelyn died. 3 years since the accident. 3 years since the press demanded answers and his board demanded control. 3 years since he rewrote the employee handbook and made one rule final: no workplace relationships. No exceptions. No warnings. No one questioned it. Not after the tabloid storm. Not after the way Weller silenced his shareholders in a single quarterly call and fired 3 VPs for sending heart emojis on company email. He didn't joke. He didn't forget. And no one, not legal, not HR, not even his cold-blooded chief of staff, had dared bring it up since. Until now. Until the elevator doors opened on a Tuesday morning and the new assistant stepped onto his floor. Her name was Maren Blake. She wasn't tall, wasn't loud, didn't dress like someone who wanted to be noticed. Gray knit sweater, simple black slacks, dark brown hair pinned into a clean, functional twist, minimal makeup, quiet posture, clipboard in hand, eyes sharp, not cold, not warm, just present. And something about her made the air change. Grayson noticed it in the smallest ways. The way she moved silently between departments. The way she stood just far enough from the glass to reflect but never be seen. The way she listened fully without ever reacting. She'd been assigned by HR, temporary fill-in, 2-week contract, no prior connection, no social media. And yet by noon that first day, she knew everyone's coffee order, the alarm override code, and the fact that Weller didn't allow his office door to be closed unless he closed it himself. No one told her that, but she knew. It wasn't until Thursday that he heard her speak. He had just stepped into his office, coat slung over one shoulder, jaw tight from a 5 a.m. call with Zurich, when a file appeared on his desk that hadn't been there 2 minutes earlier. Handwritten, his name on the label. Inside, meeting notes, printed slides, and a small red leather notebook. He hadn't seen one like in years. Worn edges, cream pages, no branding, identical to the one Evelyn used to carry. Same gold corner clasps, same size, same hand-stitched spine. He opened it slowly. Inside, in Evelyn's unmistakable script, Q3, redline Singapore asset shift. Confirm with Barlow before closing. He froze, not because of what it said, but because Evelyn had written that note 2 weeks before she died. And that deal was only just resurfacing now. He stood there, coat still on his arm, notebook open, staring, until a voice spoke gently behind him. The report was missing Appendix C. I pulled it from the archived version. He turned. Maren, no clipboard now, just standing there, still, calm, like she hadn't just cracked open something he'd buried in a locked drawer of his soul. Where did you get this? He asked. She tilted her head slightly, not answering, just watching him. Who gave this to you? Still no answer. Just a faint shift in her expression, not a smile. Not a lie. Recognition. She knew. And suddenly, he wasn't the one asking the questions anymore. By Friday morning, the notebook was gone. Not missing, removed. Grayson had left it on his desk overnight, its worn red leather cover tucked under a file he'd barely pretended to read. When he returned the next day, the file remained. But the notebook? Vanished. No one had entered his office. His door required biometric access, his thumbprint, and no one else's. The log showed nothing. His assistant, if she could be called that, hadn't even arrived yet. But he knew. She'd taken it. The question wasn't how. It was why. He didn't ask her directly. Grayson Weller didn't chase answers. He summoned them. By noon, he'd sent a single-line email to HR. Maren Blake, full personnel file. Immediately, the reply came minutes later. Sir, she was placed via external contractor. Temp agency. 1-week term extension approved last night. Should we override? Override? He hadn't approved anything. Another line followed. Attached is her contract, signed via DocuSign. Your credentials verified. He opened it. His signature was there, dated, time-stamped, except he hadn't touched the file. Someone had forged his approval. His jaw tightened. His chest went still. He clicked open the background check. The resume was perfect. Too perfect. Undergraduate at a shuttered private college in Vermont. Grad program that no longer existed. 3 years at an advisory firm that filed for bankruptcy mid-pandemic. A list of references, all disconnected numbers. No family listed. No emergency contact. No social media footprint. No birth certificate on record. Marin Blake didn't exist. At least, not officially. He watched her that afternoon. Not like a CEO watches staff. Like a man watches a hallway and knows it's about to collapse. She moved with the same impossible calm, organizing files that no one had asked her to touch, replacing dead light bulbs without instruction, fixing an error on the Zurich budget draft that hadn't even been noticed yet. She knew things before they happened. And more unsettling, she didn't flinch when he stared. At one point, their eyes met across the glass. Her gaze didn't shift, didn't dart away. She held it, like she was waiting for him to catch up. That night, he sat in the penthouse suite above the office. His suit jacket hung loose around his shoulders, whiskey in one hand, the security camera feed in the other. He rewound the footage from the day she arrived. Nothing unusual at first. Standard onboarding. A 2-minute briefing from his chief of staff. Badge activation. ID photo. Then something off. The moment Marin entered the elevator, she reached in her bag and slipped something inside the panel casing just above the emergency switch. A small black strip, barely visible. Sleight of hand. Then the camera glitched. For seconds of static. When it resumed, she was calm, smiling politely, stepping onto his floor like nothing had happened. She didn't just arrive. She inserted herself. He pulled open the encrypted photo archive, typed a password he hadn't used since Evelyn's memorial. A single folder, EV personal, dozens of photos, most untouched since she passed. Vacations, notes, scans of her sketchbooks, birthday toasts, one taken exactly 5 years ago. Evelyn seated in the library of their Colorado home, laughing, scribbling something in a red notebook, and just visible behind her in the far edge of the frame. A teenage girl, watching her, silent, dark-haired, barely 15. Grayson leaned in, zoomed. The face was younger, but unmistakable. It was Marin. Grayson Weller didn't make threats. He made space, and then waited for the truth to step into it. That's what he told himself as he sat behind his soundproofed office wall, watching the surveillance feed on a private tablet. No one else could access this angle. A tucked-away stairwell camera 3 floors below, motion triggered only during resets. There she was again, Marin, exiting through the north stairwell. Her coat tight around her frame, hair swept up in that clean, no-nonsense twist. The same pattern, same rhythm. But tonight, something shifted. She paused at the landing, looked up once as if checking for movement, then moved toward the wall, to the old emergency fire panel casing most employees didn't know existed. She reached inside and pulled something out. Another notebook, red leather, a smaller one, no label, worn at the edges. She stood in silence, flipping it open, her face unreadable, her hands steady, and for one slivered moment, he wasn't sure if she was reading someone else's words or preparing to write her own. That's when he moved. The stairwell felt colder than it should have. Industrial concrete, humming light fixtures, the echo of air systems breathing behind the walls. Grayson descended in silence. His footsteps measured, his breath slower than usual. Every part of him calculated, except the part already unraveling. He turned the corner just as she slid the notebook under her coat. She didn't startle. She didn't pretend. She turned to face him like she knew he'd come, like she had waited. You followed me. You made it easy. A long beat passed between them. The stairwell humming with the buzz of fluorescent light, the hum of pressure behind their silence. That photo, he said. Colorado. 5 years ago. You were in it. Marin didn't blink. I was. Why were you in my house? Because Evelyn invited me. The answer knocked something out of him. Not just surprise, disorientation. She didn't tell me that. She promised not to. You're saying she kept a secret from me? No, Marin said, and her voice softened but didn't break. She kept this from you. For a reason. Grayson narrowed his eyes. What reason? Marin stepped forward, slow, deliberate. Because she knew you tried to fix it. Turn it into something else. Rewrite it. Just like you rewrote the company handbook. Just like you buried her legacy under compliance and silence. Grayson flinched. Barely. But she saw it. You have no idea what her death cost me. You're right, Marin replied. But I know what it cost her. She pulled the notebook free from her coat. Smaller than the one before. Older. The edges curled. She didn't offer it yet. Not until she said. She didn't want her name on a building. She wanted to build something that breathed. Something that lived without her in it. Grayson stared at the notebook. What is it? Her final pages. Final. After she found out she was dying. Grayson's hand reached out slowly. He took it like it was evidence, but held it like it was glass. He opened to the first page. Blank. Then the second. If he ever finds this, tell him I didn't want to disappear. I wanted to be remembered differently. Evelyn's handwriting. Unmistakable. Tight. Slanted. Strong. He felt a lump rise in his throat. How long have you had this? 2 years. Why now? Because she asked me to wait until you could actually see her, not just mourn her. She stepped back then into the shadow of the stairwell light. You wanted to ban love because it distracted people, because it made things messy. She didn't believe that. Grayson's voice dropped. And you? Her eyes didn't shift. I think love isn't the thing that breaks companies. She paused. I think it's the lies we tell to protect people from grief. Grayson didn't read the notebook at his desk. He didn't sit beneath the buzz of overhead lights or lean over sleek marble counters surrounded by silence and skyline. He couldn't. He took it home, to the house Evelyn died in, the house that hadn't changed in 3 years. Same linen sheets folded too tight. Same decanter still half full in the bar cart. Same untouched piano in the corner. Hers, not his, collecting dust that no one dared to wipe. The house wasn't haunted by her. It was haunted by who he was before he lost her. And as he sat in the center of that stillness, the notebook in his lap, the leather worn warm from Marin's hands, or Evelyn's before her, he felt it all rush back. Not grief, not guilt, just a thunderous silence where love used to be. The first half of the notebook was journal entries. Soft reflections, half-finished sketches, bits of Evelyn's voice he hadn't heard in years. If I could step out of the building and into the street without them recognizing me, I think I'd finally be able to breathe. He doesn't know, and maybe that's mercy. Marin reminds me of me. Before the spotlight, before the merger, before everything started being measured in quarterly returns instead of people. Grayson read each line slowly, like it might break in his hands. But then, past the midpoint, something shifted. The tone sharpened. The entries became strategic. Specific. She'd been planning something. If I don't make it to Q4, Marin is the only one who knows where the real files are. Not the whitewashed reports. The raw ones. The ones I collected myself. He won't believe it if she tells him outright. He'll need to see it in my hand, on my terms. Project Echo must stay buried until we can release the employee data safely. Otherwise, it collapses everything. Grayson's chest tightened. Project Echo. He hadn't heard that name in years. It was a short-lived internal initiative, launched, shuttered, and forgotten under a fog of compliance disclaimers and HR violations. But Evelyn's version of Echo wasn't about streamlining internal systems. It was about whistleblowing. She'd built a shadow network. Anonymous surveys, undocumented reports, protection protocols. She'd taken every complaint, every suppressed voice inside Weller Group, and stored it somewhere off-grid. And now, she'd handed the key to Marin. He didn't sleep that night. He couldn't. By morning, he was at his desk again, the notebook now hidden in the drawer where her photos used to be. He didn't call security. He didn't revoke Marin's badge. He did something far more dangerous. He asked her to stay. Formally. Permanently. No one questioned it. No one even blinked. But Marin? She didn't look surprised. She walked into his office that morning, quietly accepted the offer letter already printed on his desk, and tucked it into her bag without unfolding it. "You're not going to read it?" he asked. She met his eyes. "I already know what it says." He didn't respond. She turned to go but stopped. "The files Evelyn mentioned," she said softly. "They're in a place even you can't access." Grayson raised an eyebrow. "Try me." She tilted her head, a half-smile forming, the first one he'd seen. "They're inside the Foundation's charity archive." His mouth parted, but no sound came out. "She hid them in the one place no one audits," Marin continued, "because the only person who ever bothered to check it was her." And with that, she was gone. The Weller Foundation headquarters didn't have a security team. It didn't need one. Its archives weren't built for scrutiny. They were built for image, for paperwork, for tax season, which is exactly why Evelyn chose it. Grayson walked in at 4:15 a.m. No lights on, no alarms tripped, no receptionist, just his own passcode, a retinal scan, and a silence so thick it muffled the sound of his own breathing. The archive was buried 2 levels down. No elevator, just a fire stairwell behind a false panel in the executive lounge. Evelyn had redesigned it herself. At the time, she told him it was for donor privacy. Now, he wasn't so sure. The air was dry, the kind that makes your skin feel older. Cabinets stretched wall to wall, coated in numbered brass plaques. Redacted financial ledgers, annual letters from nonprofits, curated press statements in plastic binders, all arranged like an elegant lie. And then, near the back, Cabinet 47. The label didn't match the rest. Where others read a e-donor cycle or legacy disbursements, this one read Echo, internal/not for publication. His chest tightened. He opened it. Inside, one black binder, leather-bound, weighty, no digital equivalent, and stacked behind it, organized in files Evelyn had labeled by hand, were names. The first folder read, Terminations, Reason, Culture Conflict. He opened it. Dozens of profiles. All women. Almost all under 35. Assistant directors. Data analysts. HR interns. Overseas project liaisons. Some with glowing reviews. Some with none. Some with pages missing entirely. Every termination was filed under personality fit, unresolvable friction, or the chillingly vague internal misalignment. Grayson recognized 3 of the names. One had once delivered his quarterly reports. Another had traveled with him to Oslo in 18. Evelyn had thanked her personally in front of the entire room. He remembered asking where she went 2 months later. His chief of staff had told him flatly, she resigned. But Evelyn must have known even then. Each profile came with a sealed testimonial. Most handwritten, all anonymous. He cornered me in the server room. Said I was lucky to be promoted. I asked to transfer. They said the only option was out. She told me to file it. But when I did, they told me to leave quietly or it would ruin my career. Attached to one file was a pink post-it. Evelyn's handwriting. New. And did nothing. No name. Just that. Grayson swallowed. He opened the next folder. Incident reports, not escalated. This one was worse. Dozens of printed HR complaint forms. Never followed through. Time stamped. Email forwarded. Then quietly marked as handled. Most weren't even signed by the accused. One had Grayson's own initials on the dismissal line. He stared at it for a full minute. It was dated the week Evelyn collapsed. He didn't even remember reading it. At the very back of the cabinet, there was a smaller binder. Slim, red velvet cover, gold-trimmed edges. Inside, photos, clippings, screenshots of internal chat logs, printouts of voice transcripts Evelyn must have recorded off the record. She wasn't just collecting complaints. She was collecting patterns. Proof. Some of it implicating people still on the board. Still giving speeches at women's leadership panels. Still being praised for transforming the corporate culture. Grayson felt physically ill, but more than that, he felt ashamed. Not because Evelyn kept it from him, but because she'd known all along that he wouldn't believe it until he was alone. He sat on the floor of the archive, binder open in his lap, reading through a digital printout Evelyn had annotated herself. They told her no one would believe her. She believed it for 2 years. Until I did. Then she left. I promised to remember her name. And scrawled in the margin, barely legible. That's what legacy is, G. Not a building. Not a title. A name someone refuses to forget. He didn't realize his hands were shaking until he tried to close the file and failed. When he finally stood, hours later, the sun was rising over the eastern windows of the Foundation office. The binder, heavy in his arms, felt like a verdict. He walked back up the stairs without calling Maren. Not yet. Not until he was ready to look her in the eyes and say it. I failed her, and I want to help you finish what she started. The office after hours was a different kind of cathedral. No ringing phones. No heels clicking against tile. No executive laughter echoing from behind frosted glass. Just dim light, silent corridors, and a low whisper of HVAC humming through marble. Grayson waited in it like a man walking into a confession booth. Binder in hand, jaw tight, sleeves rolled to the wrist like he was preparing for something. Not war, not peace, but maybe atonement. She was already there. Maren, standing in the corridor outside the executive lounge, arms crossed lightly, coat folded over one arm. The light above her flickered faintly, casting a glow against the slate gray of her sweater. She wasn't surprised to see him. She didn't need to be. He didn't speak right away. Neither did she. Instead, he slowly stepped forward and held up the Echo Archive binder, the one he'd pulled for the Foundation's cold steel shelves. Her eyes flicked to it, but she didn't reach. I read everything, he said, his voice quieter than usual. Stripped of sharpness, of command. Maren didn't nod, didn't react, just asked, and he swallowed once. The silence between them hung like a wire. She carried more than I ever let myself see. A beat. She tried to show you, Maren replied. He exhaled, the kind of breath that sounded like letting go of something he'd white-knuckled for years. And I buried it in pressed statements and polished grief. She didn't argue. She didn't need to. Grayson lowered the binder to his side. This should have never been your burden, he added. Maren tilted her head, almost gently. But it was. She gave it to me, and I said yes. Another silence. This one held no accusation, just understanding. I'm not going to ask you to forgive me, he said. Good, she replied, because that's not what she left you. He motioned toward his office. Maren followed. The glass doors shut behind them with a soft hiss, muffling what little sound the city made outside. The skyline looked painted, as still and unreachable as it had been the night Evelyn died. He placed the binder on the long table between them, opened it. Dozens of names, scans, statements. The ledger Evelyn kept in silence. He tapped a page near the back. These women trusted her. Maren nodded once. Some of them only told their stories because she promised no one would ever hear them without consent. Grayson looked up, and the ones who gave it, they're waiting. For what? She held his gaze now, not challenging, not pleading, just steady. For you. She reached in her bag and pulled out a slim, white flash drive, handed it to him. He turned it over in his palm. What's on here? The release plan, Evelyn's outline, interview footage. 5 women, verified. Ready. He blinked. Ready for what? For you to decide whether you're willing to use the platform she built to say what she couldn't. He stared at the drive, not like it was data, but like it was a match. There's one file missing from the archive, she added quietly. Which? The final release protocol. Evelyn left it encrypted on her private server. She meant for it to be unlocked only with dual approval. Yours and hers. Grayson frowned. She never told me that. She didn't want to. Why? Maren looked down. Her voice lowered, not out of secrecy, but reverence. Because she didn't trust that grief wouldn't make you protect the wrong people. Grayson absorbed that like a blow, then nodded. She was right. They stood for a long time in the hush that followed. Finally, he said, What do you need from me? Maren didn't hesitate. Access, silence from the board, and protection for the women when this goes public. He didn't blink. You'll have it. But then more softly, why didn't you do this without me? Maren looked at him, not with disdain, not even challenge, because she didn't want you to be the last to know. She wanted you to be the first to act. A long silence passed. Then, for the first time, Grayson stepped to the far wall, pulled a framed photograph down, one he hadn't touched in 3 years. Evelyn, laughing, caught mid-blink in a moment that wasn't curated. He set it beside the flash drive. Then help me finish it. She did not smile, but her hand moved toward the drive. Together, without another word, they sat beside one another and watched the screen load. Evelyn's final archive opened, and for the first time since her death, Grayson didn't feel like he was reading a eulogy. He felt like he was reading instructions. The upload went live at 6:02 a.m. sharp. No press rollout, no internal briefing, no logo, just a simple title in plain black text. Jillian K. Below it, recorded October 2019, approved by E. Weller. The video began with the low hum of a cheap fan. The room was small, neutral, a gray wall, soft light from a single lamp. In the chair sat a woman in her mid-30s, poised still. Her eyes were focused, not scared. Her blouse looked ironed but lived in. Her hands folded gently in her lap. She didn't introduce herself. She didn't apologize. She spoke. The first time I said no, I was told I misunderstood. The second time, I was told it was a compliment. The third time, I stopped talking. She paused. I love my job. I was good at it. But the man who hired me made it clear my silence was part of the package. I told HR. They filed it. Then I got reassigned. No reason. I told Evelyn. A breath. She didn't ask for evidence. She asked me if I wanted to be remembered. The screen faded to black. No outro. No music. No monetización. Just a still frame that read. She told Evelyn. By 6:38 a.m., it had 42,000 views. By 7:11, the company's legal team had sent 2 internal memos. By 7:25, every board member had seen the headline in their inbox. Weller Group's Forgotten Voices, a series of stories set to break the silence. And Grayson Weller? He stood at the edge of his office window, jacket off, sleeves rolled, untouched coffee cooling on the table beside him. He didn't blink, didn't reach for his phone, didn't call PR. He just watched the sunrise filter through 30 feet of floor-to-ceiling glass and whispered to no one in particular. There it is. Mare didn't come in. He hadn't expected her to. Her absence wasn't distance. It was deliberate, because now it wasn't her voice that mattered. The second video was scheduled for noon. Another at 4. Each recorded years ago, buried in Evelyn's archive. Each signed in the lower corner with a watermark. Approved EW. No filters. No edits. Just light, stillness, and story. At 9 a.m., the emergency board meeting began. 8 directors on screen. 3 in person. The air reeked of control. Damage control. One of them barked before sitting. Legal's on edge, said another. Media's calling it whistleblower marketing, sneered a third. Is this your strategy? Grayson let them go. He sat still, binder on the table. Laptop closed. A pen he never clicked resting under his fingers. When the shouting burned out, he stood, opened the binder, and turned it toward them. That's Evelyn's archive, the one I ignored, the one you never asked about. They watched, silent now. Every testimony was verified, every story filed and buried. She recorded them so this company would stop silencing pain for the sake of optics. One of the oldest members leaned forward. Grayson, this could crush us. He looked him dead in the eye. Then maybe we need to be crushed, so we can rebuild with something real. By mid-afternoon, hashtag She Told Evelyn had trended globally. The company's website crashed 3 times. Investors flooded the lines. Some pulled money, but twice as many stayed. Not because they were loyal, but because the truth felt different now. Unpackaged, raw. By sunset, an independent journalist confirmed at least 11 new testimonies submitted anonymously in response. And at 8:47 p.m., a former VP, one named in the second video, quietly resigned from a Fortune 100 advisory board. No press statement. Just gone. Grayson didn't speak to the cameras. He didn't post. He didn't spin. Instead, he walked into the editing room, where Marin now worked with a team of volunteers. People Evelyn once trusted. He stood in the doorway. She turned toward him, exhausted but clear-eyed. The next wave is ready, she said. 3 more names. Tomorrow. Grayson nodded. Let them speak. She studied him a moment. You're not afraid anymore. He met her gaze. For the first time, something in his voice softened. Not regret, not pride. Just clarity. No, he said. I'm finally listening. The world didn't fall apart. It rearranged itself. 2 weeks after the first video dropped, the impossible had happened. The silence that ruled Weller Group for years was gone. Shattered, replaced by voices. Real ones. 10 testimonies. Hundreds of thousands of views. 6 resignations, 2 of them long overdue. 3 independent investigations opened, not by scandal-hungry journalists, but by women who finally believed someone would listen. And through it all, Grayson Weller said nothing to the press. Not once. Because Evelyn had already said everything that mattered. He watched the world shift from his office in stillness. The board stopped fighting by the 5th video. The legal team pivoted. HR dissolved its old department. Investors didn't flee, they reorganized. Grayson didn't have to lead anymore. Not in the way he used to. Because the company no longer needed a CEO to protect it from truth. It needed someone to make space for it. And that was the only thing he hadn't tried before. He didn't see much of Maren during those weeks. Not because she avoided him, but because she was busy becoming Evelyn's living legacy. She'd taken up residence on the mezzanine floor Evelyn once used as her quiet planning wing. The same space no one else dared touch after her passing. No one except Maren. She worked there like a woman possessed by purpose. Coordinating edits, clearing testimonies, following Evelyn's release timeline to the minute. Grayson didn't ask questions. He just watched. Because for the first time, he wasn't afraid of someone else knowing more than he did. Each evening, Maren sent him a file. One name, one voice, one truth. He never skipped a single one. And then, on the 14th evening, her email was different. There was no file, no voice, just a line of text. There's only one voice left. The last notebook sat in a fireproof drawer behind Evelyn's old desk. Grayson hadn't touched it in 3 years. It was red leather, smaller than the others. The spine worn soft, the edges bookmarked by time. Her handwriting still intact across the front flap. For G, when the company no longer feels like your name. He sat in the dark to read it. No music, no drink, just the quiet hum of the city below and the ghost of her breath between each page. There were no charts, no bullet points, no legacy planning, only letters, unsent ones, to friends, to people she couldn't forgive, to a child they never had, memories, moments, scars, and finally, a page without introduction. 12 words, underlined once in ink so faint it looked like a whisper. Turn the foundation into a place where no one has to whisper. He stared at it for a long time, and something inside him, something carefully constructed and bolted shut over years of structure and silence, began to collapse. Not with violence, with release. He didn't cry like a man unraveling. He cried like a man finally allowing himself to remember who he'd been before grief rewrote him. The press begged for a statement. He agreed to only one. No quilla, no handlers. Just him, standing beneath the foundation's newly revealed mural. Not of Evelyn's face, but of a circle of clasped hands, painted by the very intern the company had once discarded. Rehired, now funded. He wore no tie, no script. He stepped to the mic and said, "You've heard their voices. Now hear mine." He paused. Then, quieter, "I led a company that chose silence because it felt safer. We called it professionalism. We called it neutrality. But it was fear. It was image." He looked out into the crowd. His voice didn't tremble. "Evelyn tried to show us a better way, and we waited until she was gone to listen." A breath. That ends now. Behind him, the new foundation name shimmered in brushed gold. The Evelyn Foundation, where stories are heard, not managed. Afterward, he and Maren walked through the hallway Evelyn once designed herself. Curved glass, tall ceilings, filled with light she'd insisted on using instead of steel. Neither spoke, until Grayson finally asked, "Do you think this is what she wanted?" Maren didn't answer right away. Then she said, "No, I think this is what she hoped for and never expected to see." That night, Grayson returned to his home. No more monitors, no more binders. He poured a glass of wine, sat beside the piano Evelyn never finished tuning, and stared at the one photo he kept on the mantle. Not one from a gala, not a press shot. Just Evelyn, years ago, standing under a street lamp, wind in her hair, laughing at something off camera. Coffee in one hand, a red notebook in the other. Alive, uncurated, real. And for the first time since she left, Grayson didn't see failure. He didn't see loss. He didn't see legacy. He saw her, the woman who believed love didn't need rules, only truth. And this time, when she asked him, in a line she wrote for no one but him, to remember me differently, he finally could. And he did.